Kia ora, I'm Chelsea Daniels, and this is The Front Page, a daily podcast presented by the New Zealand Herald. All Blacks head coach Scott Razor Robertson is out of the role just 2 years into his 4-year contract. After reports of widespread frustration from players and staff and a damning internal review, questions remain. What went so wrong for Razor? What does this mean for our World Cup campaign? And who will have the job of cleaning up this mess? The All Blacks drama spells the beginning of a huge year for sport. 2026 sees hopes of a record medal haul for New Zealand at the Winter Olympics and a chance to cheer on the All Whites on the world stage. And of course, we're all curious to see how Netball NZ will rebuild public trust. All this and more today on The Front Page with Herald sports reporter Alex Powell. So, Alex, a major start to the year, obviously, the sporting year that is, with Razor being cut. How surprising or unsurprising is this news?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because in a way, it's sort of the only thing that makes sense if what's been put out there is true about the player unhappiness and the failings of the environment. But at the same time, this is really uncharted territory for the game in New Zealand.
Is that because it's 2 years into a 4-year contract?
No, it's never been. New Zealand Rugby have never outright sacked a coach. You remember the 22 Women's World Cup. Glenn Moore left at the start of that year, but that was his choice because of, almost similar findings and unhappiness within the playing group. But this one being 2 years out does give a bit more time. You remember the 2019 World Cup when South Africa won it at the start of 2018, they changed coach, and that sort of scene is now the absolute latest you can do it. If you do want to salvage a World Cup campaign, you sort of have to give yourself at least 2 years.
Yeah, and because people do say, well, the World Cup is, 18 months out, seems like a miles away. But in rugby world, it's really not, and especially given that the All Blacks tour in South Africa is due this year, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the way rugby is now with not just those two, but we've also got the new Nations Championship, and no one knows how seriously that's going to be taken, what that'll do for the game. Like, you don't really have much room to breathe. It's always something into something into something. And if it's now, with a World Cup at the end of 27, New Zealand Rugby kind of have been backed into a corner here.
And Scott Robertson, he was really lauded as being like this is a major opportunity for the All Blacks when he came in and took over the side as head coach. Can we pinpoint where he lost his edge?
I think the disappointing thing is that what New Zealand Rugby and what fans saw in Super Rugby at the Crusaders was never reproduced with the All Blacks. And obviously Super Rugby and Test Rugby are two completely different environments. But if Super Rugby is the proving ground to step your way into Test Rugby, no one had done what Scott Robertson did. The amount of titles the Crusaders won in a row. And the All Blacks just never looked like being able to be as successful as the Crusaders were.
And why not?
I think the test game and the club game are just so different, and maybe now we do actually have evidence of that. You remember, so Graham Henry and Steve Hansen were both incredibly successful All Blacks coaches, but they both had to go and fail with other countries before they were able to step into the All Blacks job. They both had really difficult times with Wales. But what it did was it grounded them in how the international game actually works before they could take the big job.
In terms of who could be set to replace him, are there any early contenders you can think of?
Jamie Joseph looms as the big one. He missed out to Scott Robertson after 2023 to actually take that job. He was in the running in 2019 when Sir Steve Hansen stepped down. He's come back to New Zealand to take on the job with the Highlanders. He was in Japan for the last, better part of a decade. Last year, he was given the All Blacks 15 job, so effectively the side beneath the All Blacks as a way of, keeping him in the picture and maybe putting a bit of pressure on Scott Robertson saying, hey, look, if you can't do it, we do have someone else here. So he would loom, for many people as the next cab off the rank. He would probably bring Tony Brown with him. Those two have a very good relationship. Tony Brown is currently with the Springboks, so if you can strengthen yourself and weaken your opponents at the same time, New Zealand Rugby would be silly to not explore that. You've got a guy like Dave Rennie, who has also been in the All Blacks running at one point or another. He's now offshore in Japan. You've got a guy like Vern Cotter, who's got test experience currently at the Blues. So there won't be a shortage of options. This is a job that any coach worth their salt will want, to coach the All Blacks. So it's just about making sure they get the process right. And that's the other thing is, New Zealand Rugby would be really foolish to act and make this decision if they didn't have someone else lined up. It would be a very un-New Zealand Rugby-like thing to do.
So we're not going to see an ad out on Seek or anything?
Maybe. I mean, search the pay bands and see what's paying the most, but yeah.
Yeah.
And of course you know by now who our new head coach for the All Blacks from 2024 is, Scott Robertson. So I want to congratulate Scott on his appointment. It's come following presentation to the board at our board meeting this morning, and I confirm that the board was unanimous in supporting Scott as our incoming head coach from 2024.
What kind of pressure will be on the shoulders of whoever comes in next?
I mean, it's going to be huge, isn't it? You think of where the All Blacks have always been historically a team that wins 90% of the games, and they just haven't done that for, basically since 2020. So that's 6 years of a team not at the level the fans expected them. I think that's really been interesting to see New Zealanders have to adjust to that, and a lot of them haven't. You think of where South Africa are, you think of where Ireland have been, where England are. So the pressure on the next coach, whoever that is going to be huge, and it's going to have to be an immediate improvement because, the New Zealand Rugby statement says they don't have a coach. So that's really interesting to make this kind of move and not know what the next one is.
Or do they?
Well, you'd think they'd have
They'd have a short list.
Of course, but now having to actually act on it, are they going to have to get someone out from an overseas contract to come and be an assistant? If it is Jamie Joseph and Tony Brown's currently with South Africa, that won't be cheap. A guy like Dave Rennie, he's in Japan, that won't be cheap. So, yeah, I think there's going to be pressure not just on the All Blacks, but on New Zealand Rugby to really get this right.
Have you heard anything about those internal frustrations from players and head staff?
I think that's probably going to be the most frustrating thing for Scott Robertson is this isn't really new. Like we had the review that would have happened at the end of last year, which Liam Napier, my colleague, wrote earlier this week that it did not reflect well on Scott Robertson. You had Artie Savia, reportedly considering his future if he still wanted to be an All Black. Is it worth going overseas? Because let's not forget, being an All Black as a professional is not in your financial interest. You can make so much more money going overseas. We saw it with Richie Mo'unga. I've seen it with Shannon Frizzell, Harry Plummer, who was a fringe All Black and is now making exponentially more money in France. So for a guy like Artie to actually have that up his sleeve, I think really would have set alarm bells off at New Zealand Rugby.
And in terms of when we hear about it, the public, and I say we because I'm the public when it comes to sports journalism, as you know. When I read something like that Artie Savia stuff, from the back end, when the information gets to you, how solid is it when it ends up on the site? Do you know what I mean?
I mean, as a general rule, not just with rugby, but with all sort of sports journalism, if you can get it from sort of two places that don't have anything to do with each other, you've generally got something that you feel is worth going on. So, I can't speak for how Liam goes about doing his stories, but he's not silly in how he does this.
Yeah, so generally when you see Artie Savia's looking overseas at other interests, he really actually probably is,
He's already in Japan right now. He's been there a couple of years ago. Like the desire from both parties to continue that relationship would be very strong. Japanese rugby would get one of the best players in the world playing in their league. Artie Savia would have a much easier life. Like, let's not forget the physical demands of playing in Japan is so different to playing in New Zealand. You're playing for much less time. By playing in Japan, he wouldn't be eligible for the All Blacks, so they wouldn't have to worry about that. So if that's the sort of the way Artie Savia would want to go, it would absolutely be open to him.
And in terms of Razor, what next for him?
Yeah, I imagine he won't jump straight into another job. He has always said he wanted to win the World Cup with two different countries.
Okay.
Which, fair play. Win it with one country first, Razor.
Yeah, has he?
But Scott Robertson finished his playing career in France. He speaks fluent French. There has always been a French connection, if you pardon the pun. So I can see him getting a nice club job over there. Club sides will not hesitate to get Scott Robertson in. As soon as anyone is made, or any position is made available, they'll go for Scott Robertson. He'll be at the top of a lot of clubs' lists. Remember, before he got the All Blacks job, there was talk England wanted him. Fiji put in a bid for him, and he came out and said Buller at the start of a press conference, just to sort of give NZR a shove and say, if you don't hire me, someone else will. Whether or not what's happened with the All Blacks has scarred him, it doesn't change the fact that he's a very good motivator of a group. You hear about his time at the Crusaders, and what he was able to do there. Like, they hadn't won a title for years.
Well, it was legendary, to say the least.
Yeah. They hadn't won a title for a decade when he turned up, and then they only won when he was there. So,
well, I moved to Christchurch originally, and I thought, and that was around his time at the helm, and I thought, amazing, I'm going to go for the Crusaders because they obviously win all the time, but I've come in at the point where Razor turned it around.
I think there was a stat. So the first year Razor wasn't at the Crusaders, and the Crusaders struggled under Rob Penny. There were children in year 3 in Christchurch who had never lived in an era where the Crusaders weren't Super Rugby champions.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The medals for the 2026 Winter Olympic Games have now been revealed.
Today, organizers unveiled the medals for the Milan Cortina Winter Games. The big reveal comes about 200 days before the start of the Games. The medals, designed by the Italian State Mint and Polygraphic Institute, are made from recycled metals using renewable energy. Each one features a split design to symbolize both Olympic, Paralympic values. The Games start February 6th. Paralympic Games will follow in March.
Anyway, if we move on, 2026 is going to be a massive year for sports, any way you look at it. Winter Olympics, Alex. Do you think we will likely get our best medal count ever? We're hoping for it.
New Zealand is still relatively quite young in terms of the Winter Olympics. Like, you remember the last one out in Beijing was, as the benchmark now, because you had, Zoe Sadowski-Synnott and Nico Porteous both win gold. So I don't think it's realistic to come out before a Winter Olympics and say, we need to be doing this, this and this, and we'll have our best ever games. Like, it's just not really how it works. Obviously, Zoe Sadowski-Synnott is going to be there again. Alice Robinson does loom as a medal hopeful this time, if maybe even a medal favourite. So you can never really say this is what should happen at any Olympic Games, winter or summer. But, it's always the hope, isn't it?
And what about Com Games in Glasgow?
The Com Games is weird.
Does anyone watch it anymore? Or is that naughty to say?
It probably is naughty to say, but you're saying it on good grounds. Like, no one wants to host it. You remember all the drama with everyone dropping out, and now, they've found somewhere to host it. Yeah. But it does feel as though we're moving into an era where the Commonwealth Games just might not carry any sort of weight. But saying that, I can't wait to see what the Silver Ferns do after all that last year.
Exactly. Hey, that'll be the one to watch, especially in the Com Games. How do you think that that'll go around?
I think if they can get to the gold medal match against Australia, let's be honest, I think that's sort of the bare minimum of where this side should be. Obviously all the fallout from last year is we're still yet to see how that'll all be resolved. But I think that is always the expectation with a Silver Ferns side into a Commonwealth Games. And I've just said we can't go into an Olympics and think for expectations, but Silver Ferns, Commonwealth Games, it is an event that New Zealand have historically performed in.
Another one, Football World Cup. It'll be a big one this year, given the All Whites will be there and we'll be able to cheer them on the world stage. What are their chances overall, though?
It's another interesting one. Like the last time they were there in 2010, the New Zealand got out with 3 draws. It wasn't enough to advance, but that was such a huge moment. They were the only unbeaten team in the whole tournament. Spain, who won it, lost a game. This time around, New Zealand football, you would say, are probably in a stronger position. Like there are so many more players playing in good overseas leagues than there were in 2010. Football at home is obviously a lot stronger now with the Phoenix and Auckland FC having 2 teams in the Australian League. But World Cups are just so special. Like, this isn't just the pinnacle for New Zealand. This is the pinnacle for maybe even all of sport. Like, I don't think there's a bigger sporting event on the planet, bar the Olympics, than the Football World Cup. They're going to have a tough time of it with the group. It seems like Belgium will be,
very difficult.
A big opportunity for it. But Belgium aren't as strong as they were, 8 years ago with the last couple of World Cups. So, you never know with these things. We've seen, you remember Morocco at the last World Cup. No one was expecting them, and then they got as far as they did.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so who knows?
And it's the cup, the first cup to be held by 3 nations. You've got the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And I've seen some stuff online, especially about there's apparently going to be the first halftime show and people talking about this Americanization of football, and people are not really into it. The fact that they're probably going to be calling it soccer the entire time will probably get on people's nerves. What are your feelings about that?
I'm definitely in the against camp there. Like,
Are you?
That's the whole point of football, is that it's not America's thing.
Yeah.
Like, I know that the US has such high representation in football at all levels because, there's such a big influx of immigrants and second generation. So it's not unprecedented.
You had David Beckham at LA Galaxy.
Beckham went to the Galaxy. Look at some of the players playing in there domestically now. The women's team is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
They win everything. But it still just feels a bit wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you have your own sports, America. This is our thing.
It'll bring in big money, though, if the Super Bowl is anything to go by, yeah.
Oh, the Super Bowl is always a misnomer of people saying, the Super Bowl drew in this many viewers and brings in this much money. It's like, there are so many. Like, for America, sure, because you're only really comparing it to the NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey. But when you compare American football with, football, it's chalk and cheese.
Let's talk cricket. The Black Caps will perform in England, Aussie, and the T20 World Cup. How do you reckon they'll go?
The England tour is really interesting because it'll be the first one post the Ashes for England. Obviously, a lot of pressure on the captain and coach, Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum.
And I was in Australia over Christmas, so I know a lot about that.
And I think that the World Cup comes before that, so there might even be a scenario where McCullum gets fired.
Yeah.
In terms of New Zealand, look, there are so many tournaments of cricket now. There's one a year until 2031 at the Earls, at least one a year. So the ability to come in and perform on that stage isn't really anything new to any of the teams. This will be the first one under Rob Walter, the new coach, who was appointed last year. So I have high hopes for the team. Walter with South Africa took his team to the final, and they'd only been together for 3 days before that. So you never know what can happen, but it's just such an interesting time with the amount of tournaments in cricket now. The Australia tour at the end of the year, like you remember in 2019, I'm sure you do, you're a huge cricket fan, Chel. New Zealand went to Australia in 2019 with high hopes. That was the best New Zealand team in a long time, and they got absolutely smashed.
Yeah.
There'll be similar things this year, not just that, but this is a very old Australian side. Like, I think there's only one player in the starting 11 under 30, maybe 2. If the stars
Ancient.
well, yeah. To go to Australia and win is about so much more than being better than at cricket. You have to have so many things go your way and everything go against them. But if there's no real better time than now.
And last but not least, the controversial enhanced games will be this year. That's the one which permits performance-enhancing drugs.
Encourages it, doesn't it?
Encourages it. Yeah. First off, what are your thoughts on it?
I don't know. It's one of those things that I want to see what it looks like.
You either want to see what it looks like, you're intrigued, or you're completely outraged.
Yeah, if someone's, lining up on the 100 metres start line, their heart explodes from all the drugs they've taken, then I'm sure that'll be bad. But you just want to see records broken, and that's their whole rationale for doing it in the first place. Alex,
give me your wildest prediction of the year.
Oh, I mean, I can't say Scott Robertson's.
No.
I don't know. Silver Ferns win Commonwealth Games gold.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it that's the wildest?
Well, I mean, you've put me on the spot here, Chelsea. I was not warned. Okay, what's yours then?
I would say Alcaraz, Sinner in a majority, if not all, Grand Slam finals.
The two of them against each other?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, they're the next crop, the cream of the crop, right?
Yeah, I mean, tennis is in a really interesting place now in the post-Nadal, Federer. I mean, Djokovic is still there, Murray. So it really is rife for the next generation to come through. I mean, they're already here, so.
Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for this episode of The Front Page. You can read more about today's stories and extensive news coverage at nzherald.co.nz. The Front Page is produced by Jane Yee and Richard Martin, who is also our editor. I'm Chelsea Daniels. Subscribe to The Front Page on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, and tune in tomorrow for another look behind the headlines.